for a moment. We will begin this meeting in just a second. But first, I'd like to ask the Lord's blessing upon this gathering this evening. Gracious Heavenly Father, you've provided so much for us, to us, as stewards of this community and of all the resources that we have. We ask that you would give us wisdom as we conduct the public's business this evening. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
And the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I call this meeting of the Spotsylvania County Planning Commission to order. I note that we do have a quorum. Let's continue with announcements.
I have a couple of announcements this evening. Just an update to the planning update that was in your packets. We will have a public hearing on the retreat at Chancellorsville proffer amendment on May 20th, but Hill Farm was not ready to go, so that will slide one meeting. There is one additional community meeting that I wanted to bring to your attention. This is for Tricord. It is Wednesday, May 13th at 6 p.m. at Fairview at River Club Church. And the proposal is the Village at Crossroads Station, which is 87 acres. They're proposing a mixed-use 3 zoning designation for a maximum of 561 single-family attached and detached homes. So that is Wednesday, May 13th at 6 p.m. About the retreat at Chancellorsville proffer amendment will be on the agenda for Wednesday, May 20th for public hearing. The other item that we originally thought was going to be ready to go was Hill Farm. That is another rezoning. That one's not going to be ready for May 20th. That one will slide one meeting.
Thank you so much. The next item is the approval of the minutes of the meeting of April 15th. Everyone should have had a chance to examine them. Were there any additional or any changes, concerns? Seeing none, then let's proceed to a vote. I'm sorry, is there a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. The motion's been made and seconded. Let's proceed to a vote. A vote in favor recommends approval of the minutes. It is unanimous. I'm sorry, it is not unanimous. We have one abstention because Mr. Bullock wasn't here. Thank you. So it's 5-1. The minutes are adopted. Unfinished business. The final annual report.
Yes, in your packets I included the final version of the annual report. The Planning Commission had approved it contingent on a couple of changes. I did include the members of the Proffer Advisory Committee on page 2. I changed the table on page 3 so that it begins at 0 for the population. And then I did receive the information on page 5 for the 70 to 30 residential to commercial growth goal. So for, as of 1/1/2015, we had 80.36% residential for the tax base in Spotsylvania County. So without objection, I will forward this to the Board of Supervisors.
None being heard, so done. Let's have the fun now this evening. Our special use public hearings, SUP 15-0001.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Patrick White, Planning Department, Planner 3. The first case before you tonight is, as you stated, SUP 1501. And if I could have the screen, please. Thank you. The application is for a 195-foot tall monopole communication tower. It is topped with a 4-foot lightning rod. The tower is within a 50 by 100 foot equipment area. It's proposed to be located on a property known as Catlett Lumber or Catlett Sawmill, located at 9330 Eli's Ford Road. This site is approximately 1.3 miles away from the intersection with Route 3. is zoned rural, as well as the properties around it. Has a future land use designation of rural, as do most around them. You'll note that the property at the apex here of the triangle, that is an open space future land use designation. We have received a general development plan, GDP, for the subject case. It depicts the equipment area and the monopole tower approximately 175 feet from the edge of pavement of Eli's Ford Road. The equipment area, again, 100 by 50 feet, is secured, proposed to be secured with an 8-foot high fence, topped with an additional 1 foot of anti-climbing barbed wire. The applicants have submitted information to us, and as shown on the GDP, there is going to be room for 4 or more total carriers. The pole itself is proposed as a monopole communication tower. It is engineered with breakpoint technology that should, if failure occur, a fall zone around the tower is only required to be 20 feet. It does this by braking in strategic locations to double over on itself with a remaining segment that would actually land on the ground being less than 20 feet. The GDP also contains a 100-foot tree save area in an effort to better screen this property, the monopole itself. A little bit of history may be valuable here. The tower was originally proposed to be a little bit, this is the third site or proposed location that the applicants have proposed, the first of which was requested to be pushed back further away from Eli's Ford. The applicants did that. They pushed it back further, and at that point found that it would be located within a Chancellorsville core battlefield area, resulting in a need to move the tower out of the battlefield area. So the third location is the one you see before you now. According to the GDP and aerial photographs, it's approximately 536 feet to the nearest house, which is located in a subdivision titled Golden Oaks Plantation, as I recall. It is also within 600 feet of properties within the Mineral Springs Plantation subdivision. The nearest county facility that may be an alternate site would be the Hunting Run Park. It's within a mile. The park has a boat ramp, some facilities, fishing. It's a flatter space. It's possible the tower could be more visible there. 4 different sites were vetted as potential co-location sites. These were reviewed by the county consultant, Atlantic Technology Consulting, who are present. It was concluded that co-locating on an existing facility would not reduce or eliminate the need for the proposed tower. The applicant provided us, the county, with some photo simulations. The ones before you are the most prominent. This photograph shows what the tower would be, how visible it would be traveling west down Eli's Ford Road. This simulation shows its visibility from a neighboring property in the Mineral Springs Plantation. Further within the same subdivision, this photo simulation shows it becomes a little more difficult to see. From Golden Oaks, we also see that it is somewhat visible from that neighborhood. And farther away past the Hunting Run Park, at a distance of a little over a mile, the tower is visible. The topography there allows some visibility. It's important to note that there's a chance it could be seen from somewhere on Route 3. I mean, if one could see the tower from 1.8 miles away, and it's approximately 1.3 vehicular miles from the intersection of Route 3, the topography could yield some visibility from Route 3. In addition to photosims, the applicants also provided us with numerous required submittal materials, including a FAA air hazard report, radio frequency report, the approval or the finding of the State Historic Preservation Officer. We, the county, route these packets to a consultant, Atlantic Technology Consultant, for their input on design standards and whether co-location is possible and many other items. They concurred that the tower does abide by design and common practices. We brought this case to the Cable TV and Telecommunication Commission on April the 9th, who recommended that it be approved, but also that it be equipped with a remote lighting package. By that, they mean that they wish the tower to have the ability to be turned on from an off-site location in the event of an emergency. As it's proposed, the tower is under 200 feet, thus it's not required to be lit.
Has the commission been told, they keep coming back to us every time with these lighting requests. Have they been told that they're not required? I don't know, do they just seem to send it to us every single time they want these light bulbs on top of them?
I can answer to that since I sit on that commission.
And well, do you?
It's a safety factor that certain members of the commission have about the helicopters for rescue and whatnot. I fully understand, and
Okay.
they do understand the law. It's a voluntary request.
Okay, and then it's illegal to fly below 500 feet.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Staff reviewed this and found the following. The proposal does enhance and close a gap in the wireless telecommunication network. The tower will be visible from Eli's Ford as well as some neighboring residences. It will not be required to be lit. The State Historic Preservation Officer opined the tower should have no adverse visual nor direct impact upon any historical resources. Satisfied the special use standards of review and was consistent with the comprehensive plan. Staff is recommending approval with 4 conditions. The first of which being that the tower and compound shall be built in conformance with the GDP. The second, that the county shall have first right of refusal of equipment needed for the county's emergency communication system. That the final site design and operation must comply with our telecommunications regulations. And that in the event this site causes any interference, the applicant will work expeditiously with the county to resolve this. The county has received a great deal of correspondence on this case, including multiple letters of opposition, 2 petitions totaling just under 300 signatures, notification that the Mineral Springs Homeowners Association voted against the cellular tower, 2 documents alleging that the Catlett property may have environmental concerns, those being the environmental site assessment and the limited environmental site assessment. We, upon hearing this, did contact DEQ, at which point we received a response from DEQ stating that they had visited the site, that the biggest offense that they located out there were some above-ground storage tanks that needed attention, and what I believe the term was used was housekeeping, some other items to clean up. We were also provided with a Level 2 environmental document from Tri-Leaf that was conducted on an above-ground unearthed storage tank that the Verizon team had contracted, finding that there was no significant environmental condition at that site. We also received one email relaying a phone call that was received in support of the case. And we also received a document that was unsigned but on letterhead by T.C. Catlett and Sons stating that they quarterly monitor their site and semi-annually have to submit documentation on discharge for their stormwater industrial permit. At this point, if it pleases the chairman, I believe I will take questions or allow the applicant to make their presentation, whatever you'd like.
Patrick, can you go back to the GDP plan for me for a second? I'll move forward.
I can zoom out as well.
No, that's okay. That proposed entrance, that's a dedicated entrance into this facility, correct?
That is a proposed and dedicated access road that would go only to the communication equipment area.
And if I understand correctly, the property on which this facility sits will be rented, but will be maintained and operated by the applicant?
That is correct.
Okay.
I have a question. If you could remind us, and especially our audience, the right there on that slide, we see the designation of a core area versus a study area. Obviously, the maps that most people have at home wouldn't show that designation. Do you know the definitions of the difference between the two?
As I understand them, the core area is more. I don't have a great answer for you.
Well, then I imagine they're fairly hard to understand anyway. Is that line part of the comp plan?
No.
So this line is an arbitrary line put down on the paper by whom?
I don't know that it's an arbitrary line. As I understand, when this process was being vetted through the State Historic Preservation Officer, at that time, this line was determined. Perhaps the applicant would be able to provide us a little bit more insight onto that line.
Well, but this line presumably occurred sometime in the late 20th century or early 21st century? I would presume that this is a relatively new thing.
Afraid I don't have the answer to that, sir.
Well, what I'm getting at is there's nobody alive today, and hasn't been for close to 100 years, that would be capable of accurately determining and remembering where core activity occurred. And so when the applicant voluntarily relocated the proposed site to this location versus being across the line in the core area, is that our mandate, or is this a state mandate, or is this a federal requirement?
The request to move the tower outside of the battlefield core area was originated during the process of the NEPA, or Environmental Protection Review. I believe that, I don't like to believe, I can consult our documentation and get an answer as to who specifically requested that it be moved in a moment of minutes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
The NEPA document's been approved, correct?
It has been.
Where are we with that?
It has been reviewed. It is a very large document that is required as part of an FCC approval of these towers. It documents a variety of course, environmental things.
Along with the historical, right? And we have a determination from the historical folks that this does not have any impact.
We do.
On the historical resources. And we also have no objection from the Civil War Trust folks and other interests?
Let me be precise. The State Historic Preservation Officer in their documentation concurred with the, I believe the Civil War Trust were amongst those parties, and if you'll allow me, I will look that up.
Okay, yep.
Okay, so while you're on the slides too, could you go back to the recommendations?
Yes, sir.
Add another question here. Number 3. If that recommendation were not included in this comment, would the applicant be exempt from section 23-7A.4.1 of the code?
No, sir.
So this is sort of a redundant requirement? Yeah, that's just one of those things that, confuses the public. They think that if you don't put something in there like that, oh my gosh, something terrible is going to happen, and I think it's just a terrible waste of paper and causes confusion just for the future.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Please, Chair, I have one question. The last site that was in the core area, how did the residents feel about that? What's the consensus about the neighborhood?
That's a good question.
I would only be speculating, I'm sorry.
I think that's a good question, and perhaps in the public hearing, I'm sure we'll hear from people to perhaps comment on that as they address the issues.
What I want to get at is that if all these entities didn't have any problem with it being in the last designated area, why was it changed?
One of the entities certainly did.
And who was that?
That would have been I believe it was as I recall, it's the parks, but I can pull that document and be for certain.
But Mr. Catlett owns this land, right?
Yes.
And there's no recorded easement or any sort of dedication that the Park Service has any right to dictate to what he should use his land.
Well, see, I can speak to that. I own a piece of property on the battlefield, Spotsylvania, and I've had them tell me what I can and cannot do on my land, and they don't have the power to do that. But they want to control what I do, but they're not interested in buying any of it or even purchasing the development rights for it. But they are all fired ready to tell me what I can and cannot do. Thank you.
Any other questions? Then let's hear from the applicant. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, sir.
Patrick.
I will advance them for you.
Oh, terrific. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, I'm Tam Murray of Community Wireless Structures, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. First slide. Also with me tonight are Paul Dugan, and if there's anybody in the room, anybody within 100 miles who can answer what's core and what's not core, it's Paul Dugan. I'm sorry, David Dutton. David, you raise your hand there. Yep. Okay, so he's available for part of this. Paul Dugan is Verizon's radio frequency engineer, and Paul can address why the county, any county properties, especially to the west at the reservoir, don't work. Philip Catlett is here to represent Catlett Lumber if there are specific questions, and Charlie Payne is a zoning attorney. Next slide. So a new monopole at Catlett Lumber. It's an excellent host parcel. We'll go into the reasons. They're completely in compliance in spite of everything that's been flying in the last 36 hours. This is a wireless dead zone. There are some differing opinions in this room, but I don't think anybody is going to say this is a great place for using your phone, your tablet, and whatnot. There's a big coverage hole. A tall structure is needed to cover the coverage hole to get the signal out. Historic preservation, it was a long 14-month negotiation. Everyone in this room has a service with a national carrier. Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, or Sprint. They're federal licensees. They cannot go on a structure that doesn't have NEPA approval. Part of the NEPA approval is historic sign-off. and they take that core line, which David Dutton can address as to where that line came from. They take it very seriously. You can see this structure in a couple spots, but I think it's fair to characterize it as minimal visual impacts. The Planning Department supports this site, as does Public Safety. Crosshatched area is the Port Service area. It extends south of Route 3. It extends all the way up to the Rappahannock River, and it's big. Our pie-shaped parcel is down near the bottom. It's a great place to cover there, the neighborhoods to the north, and down south of Route 3. There's probably a couple more sites needed west on Ellie's Ford and maybe one further up to the east. But we're going to solve some of the problem here. This is Verizon's coverage map. White means poor service. Colored means good stuff. On the far right-hand side is the site at Central Park. It's right on 95 and 3. Blue is very robust service. Green is maybe 2 bars. Red is maybe 1 bar. And white, you're cussing at your phone. So this is their service beforehand. The next slide shows the improvement in service. So you have color going south of Route 3. You've got color over top of the battlefield for visitors. There's coloration north into the neighborhoods and a bit west on Ellie's Ford. Next slide. I mentioned it's an excellent host parcel. It's densely wooded, not just on this parcel, but everywhere. That screens the views. No one wants to look at it, and the views are dense, very well screened. There's currently an industrial use. It's actually 52 acres. I said 50, but it's a large parcel. And the Catlets, the current operation, is completely in compliance. Contact DEQ, ask for the FOIA request, and they'll tell you everything you ever want to know about Catlet lumber. The permit number's right there. It's been asked, what about what CWS is going to do? That's going to have some impact. Well, this is what it'll look like. This is a graveled compound, a gravel access road, security fence. The shelter is a carrier's equipment. The monopole is to the right of the shelter. There was one question I heard that, what about groundwater or wells? This foundation goes down 30 feet. The water table, I believe, for wells is much deeper than that. I don't think it's 30 feet or we'd have sinkholes. So this is what we'd propose. This is what it looks like, typically. And let me say, if you have questions during this, jump in, or I can answer them at the end. Next slide, please.
Tam, can I ask
Yes.
a quick question? On the
Sure.
foundation, how is that constructed? Is that an augured hole or?
It's a caisson foundation.
Yep.
There's rebar in it, a bird cage of rebar. As the final pour of concrete has bolts that stick up in the bottom section monopole, bolts to those, and then it's stacked in sections.
And that's an augured hole versus a big excavation?
Actually, it is, yeah. There's a drill rig that comes in and typically drills down, yes. So again, excellent parcel because of the woods. There's Mineral Springs Plantation. You can hardly see it because of the woods. You can't see Royal Oaks because of the woods. There's woods between us and the core of the battlefield whole area. This is a wonderful site for screening telecom. Next slide, please. Department of Historic Resources, David Dutton will get much more into this, and I'll leave that for him. Next slide. Again, this red line, Mr. Chairman, is not an arbitrary line. It was arrived at through consultation with an enormous number of people who really care about the Civil War and who've studied maps. There's a lot of maps that go back. It was 150 years ago, but there's still a lot of reports as to where the battle took place, where the retreats took place, and everyone's in agreement as to where that line is.
Well, my question earlier then was, who voted to put that line there? What legislative authority, by what constitutional or governmental right, who dictated this?
I don't know. I think David Dutton does, though. Want to ask him now or wait till...
We can come back to him.
Come back to him. Sure. Okay, next slide. So the red star at the bottom is the location of the CWS site on Ely's Ford, Catlett Lumber parcel. The purple parcels going north are Mineral Springs. It's roughly 100 lots. It's roughly 2 miles from top to bottom. We've colored the lots at the very bottom, which are on the outer edge of Fifth Corp and just on the inner edge of Fifth Corp, purple, because there would be some visual of this structure from there. Next slide. I want to point out, and whatever's said about this, we have an industrial sawmill, as you can see, and we have Ely's Ford Road, which is a very busy road, and then there's that red line that says plus or minus 500 feet. We have 500 feet of mature trees between Ely's Ford and Fifth Corp. You can't hide a tower completely, but if you have 500 feet of mature trees, almost two football fields, that's pretty darn good. Next slide. The worst view. Let's start with the worst. If you hunt, you can see a red circle, and if you look hard through the trees from Fifth Corp, looking through the Williams residence, you can see the top 10 feet of a structure. Admittedly, it's there. You can see it. See the top 10 to 15 feet. Guilty as charged. And then from Ely's Ford, public road, this is from opposite the Catlett Lumber entrance, the main entrance. You can see the structure. And it's odd. We didn't put the telephone pole there, but that's utility infrastructure as well. So for 200 yards on Ely's Ford, there's a prominent view of this structure. Within the neighborhood, there's limited views. Next slide, please. Mineral Springs Plantation is an amazing community, a pristine lake, beautiful wooded lots and whatnot. And I think you may hear tonight that life is, as we know it, this pristine environment is somehow going to change drastically. And I would argue, next slide, that when you really break it down, what changes? It's going to be a quiet country setting before and after. There are mature forests before and after. Large lots, that doesn't change. Pristine reservoir doesn't change. You still get to Fredericksburg, slow or fast, depending on the time of day. Ely's Ford Road, it's still going to be dangerous before or after this is built. There's a sawmill there. It's grandfathered. There is poor wireless service there, and the wireless service will improve at the cost of some brief visuals of the very, very top portion. Next slide, please. I would argue that this is serving the greater good. Wireless is not a yuppie convenience. This is something we all use daily. Everyone in this room has a device, I would hazard to say. We won't address all the crosshatch area. We'll address a really important piece. We'll address Route 3 to the south, the area around the battlefield, the neighborhoods to the north, as well as the intersection of Ely's Ford and Route 3. Last slide. And so just in summary, it's a large hole. We need a large, tall structure to address that. We negotiated with DHR for 14 months to arrive at the location that's outside the core. There are minimal visual impacts. Planning department supports it. Public safety will be enhanced, and in general, it's for the greater good. I'm available for questions, or you can go to David Dutton.
Yeah, if I may. What amendments can you make to the tower that would make it less of a visual impact? Are there things that you can do to that?
We've developed a site in Remington, Virginia. We developed another site at Randy Station. I think it was at, anyway, we've developed sites in proximity to Civil War battlefields, and we've used graduated paint. It's painted dark at the base up to the height of the trees, and it's painted sky color above that. That helps the height disappear into the sky. And that's not an approval condition, but we would agree to it as an approval condition.
All right, and monopole meaning no guy wires?
Correct. No guy wires.
Any other questions? I guess we could proceed to the public hearing, and then if we still have questions, and I can get my answer offline later. It's not necessarily totally relevant, just one of those things that...
There are a couple slides that he was going to walk through if there's time for that.
Well, let's do it quickly.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, my name is David Dutton. I'm a cultural resource professional out of Richmond. As Tam has pointed out, part of the compliance process for this project is complying with the regulations of 36 CFR 800. That's the National Historic Preservation Act. Next slide. The FCC requires that applicants consult with the Department of Historic Resources, which is known as the State Historic Preservation Officer in Virginia, as well as seek input from other consulting parties and the members of the public. For this particular project, the applicant consulted with the American Battlefield Protection Program, which is a unit of the National Park Service up in Washington. They consulted with the National Park Service, Spotsylvania Military Park here on site. Civil War Trust was invited to participate, provide input, and also members of the community. I know that there were some viewpoints submitted to the Department of Historic Resources as part of this process. Next slide. As Tam pointed out, the consultation process took over 14 months, and this was an iterative process that went back and forth talking about different types of potential impacts, how those impacts could be minimized. The requirement of the 106 process is that impacts to historic property, property that's listed or eligible for listing on the National Register, be minimized or mitigated to the greatest extent possible. So that was the goal of these conversations. In December of 2014, the American Battlefield Protection Program issued their finding that they believed that construction of the tower at the selected location would not adversely impact the Chancellorsville battlefield. Following that, in later December, the Department of Historic Resources, the SHPO's office, issued a similar letter. This was after the site had been investigated archaeologically twice. There were 2 surveys conducted on the site where the tower is going to be built. There was a military terrain analysis study that was done on the property to see if there was any key terrain or earthworks still left. And the American Battlefield Protection Program historian actually came down and made a site visit and walked the property. Next slide, please. One of the things that we do want to point out is when you look at this graphic, everything that's in gray is the battlefield, and it's what the National Park Service considers to be battlefield property that's eligible for the National Register. This was defined by the Park Service in 2009, and it was a study that was continued from the early 1990s that was requested by Congress. National Park Service employees, cultural resource professionals, actually went out in the field, walked battlefields, drew these lines. Now, there are a couple of lines that you had asked some questions about earlier. Next slide. And what we've shown here is the dotted red line, which demarcates what's called the core area of the battlefield and the study area. Everything below that red line is core area. Everything above is study area. The core area represents, according to the Park Service, that area of the battlefield where fighting occurred and where people died. The study area are all other areas of the battlefield where troop movements occurred, where you staged for battle, where you retreated, perhaps where you're waiting for the next engagement. So there's a real distinction between core area and study area. So during the consultation with the Park Service and with the State Historic Preservation Office, they were keenly interested in moving this tower out of the core area. And as you can see, the first 2 tower locations were located inside the core area. The third location, which is the preferred, was moved just outside, not a great distance, but outside of the core area, which is what both the Park Service and the VDHR wanted. I think it's important to note we are still in the battlefield, and we're still in what's considered National Register eligible property of the battlefield. But we're outside of that core area, which is what the Park Service and the state considers to be hallowed ground.
Well, so then the answer to my question is that no one by any legal jurisdiction said this is the line. It was some bureaucrat from Washington who doesn't live here, who isn't impacted by these issues, decided that there's the difference, because it appears to me it's only 300 feet different or less between the first preferred location and then the current location.
That is correct. That is correct. And this line, we actually got this data from the National Park Service. They provided GIS shapefile data that showed exactly where they had mapped the line, but you are absolutely correct in that that line is drawn by an agency official.
So it's subjective. So in reality, I mean, it could be 100 to 200 feet or more away from this line. It could be. Is that a fair statement? And one other question. I'm interested in how you define impacts. I can understand a huge development going in, impacting a battlefield and hollowed ground. But an application like this with a postage stamp size disturbance, especially with a second location, if we agree that's where the line is, to me, that second location, perhaps even the first one, is a minimal impact. Would that preclude approval of this, or from the, would it affect the NEPA document, or how would that work?
Impacts are looked at in two different ways. They're looked at as direct impacts, which is what's actually going to happen to the ground where the tower is going to be located. Indirect impacts, which for towers are visual impacts. In this particular instance, the direct impact of the tower is not, it's not great. I mean, there's not a huge area that's actually going to be impacted directly. The visual impact, it depends on where you move the tower, where you're going to be able to see it, how much of it you'll see from different vantage points. For the purposes of consultation with the Park Service and the SHPO, they felt that the actual presence of the tower within the core area of the battlefield would create a greater impact, both visually and from a direct standpoint, than it would outside of the core area. And as I mentioned, it's still within the boundaries of what's considered the battlefield, but it's moved out of what they consider to be the most important part of the battlefield.
So how do we square that with all the homes in that area and their impacts to the battlefield? I mean, there's got to be hundreds of homes out there that I would presume have impacted the battlefield.
Absolutely. If you, Patrick, if you could go back one slide. And if you can see, a lot of that's taken into consideration when the Park Service in 2009 defined what they considered to be the National Register eligible portions of the battlefield. They excluded a lot of the areas that are now currently developed, which would have been considered eligible battlefield areas, because the battlefield itself was much larger. The gray here just represents what's left that the Park Service believed had integrity and still represented enough of what the battlefield would look like at the time that the event occurred.
So from the earlier aerial photo, we also, it appeared that most of the mill and lumberyard operations are actually in the core area. And so, and that, I doubt, was there 150 years ago. So why does the Park Service think that a public safety oriented tower is any less of an impact on the area than an industrial lumber mill?
In this particular case, I mean, they're looking at the battlefield from today. What's already there in terms of development. As far as the tower is concerned, their perspective that it was just going to have less of an impact moving it outside the core.
Well, the questioning that you have, and I don't mean to expect that you would answer for them, but we've invited over the past several years the National Park Service to come and comment about things that they put up, they send to us in writing, and they have refused to come and comment about practically anything. And the National Park Service is a dreadful neighbor, and I wish they would, go somewhere else, because they have shirked their responsibilities to this community. They constantly want to tell us what we have to do to comply with them, and yet the expense that they create in terms of land that's not able to be taxed is massive, and the taxpayers of Spotsylvania County are required to pay it. It's very difficult to plan, et cetera. So I'm sure you understand. And if the Park Service is listening, I sure wish they'd come and visit us and tell us, what they're going to do to help mitigate our public safety concerns, as well as the tremendous burden of having 13,000 acres that they don't pay tax on. So there you go. Anyone else? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you asked, how could a sawmill be built or, not come into a problem, an approval problem, a federal approval problem? And the answer is that they're not, a sawmill is not a federal licensee. So the four possible carriers here, Sprint, T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon, are federal licensees. They protect and guard their licenses. That's their lifeblood. And so the feds oversee the infrastructure that they need to use to make the network work.
Well, and I have the highest of sympathy for these operators. I don't mean to sound, belligerent to them. I think it's just outrageous that the government loopholes that they are the government hurdles that they have to jump over. That's all. I didn't mean it to be, and I just think that whether it's federally regulated or not, there certainly clearly is an impact of of a sawmill, and I believe that the owners, the Catlett family, certainly has the right to conduct their business there, and it just seems odd that they're allowed to, and then the government would be so vindictive to your interests.
I understand. I completely agree.
All right. Well, then, unless there's anything else that the applicant wished to point out, let's proceed to the public hearing for the application. The secretary has a list of people who want to be on the to comment, and they will come up in a certain order. And when you do come up, you'll introduce yourself, and the little box in front of you will have three little lights that will start off green. You'll have 3 minutes to make your personal presentation. If you represent an organization, please identify that, and you'll be granted 5 minutes. The light will be on green until you have a minute remaining in your time, and then it'll turn yellow. After that, it turns red. And despite rumors to the fact that there is a trap door there is not a trap door, but we're considering this. So hopefully after 3 minutes, there'll be a conclusion to your remarks. So the public hearing is called to order, or opened rather, and let's
First to sign up was Colonel Bob Haynes, followed by Andre Mason-Pierre.
Bob Hannes, 13806 Hunting Run Drive, Mineral Springs Plantation. During the past several years, I've observed and listened to both sides of the issue pertaining to a proposed cell tower in our area, both factual information and misinformation, gross misrepresentation, and even a threatened lawsuit. When I evaluate the facts, I must conclude that safety and security are the key factors. Concern that my wife experienced firsthand. Safety and security not only for the residents of the area of coverage, but also for the individuals and families utilizing the Hunting Run Reservoir recreational facility and the tourists visiting our battlefields. Therefore, I would state at this time that my wife and I are supportive of a better cell phone coverage in our area. It's just common sense as the community continues to grow.
Thank you.
Andre Mason-Pierre, followed by Johnny Leach.
Andre Maison-Pierre, 13517 Fifth Court Lane. I have wanted cell phone coverage ever since Hurricane Isabel, which knocked out not only our power lines, but our telephone lines. I welcomed the efforts being made. I cannot see the balloon from where I live on Fifth Court Lanes. However, walking a couple lots up the street, I was shocked to see the balloon over the Williams house. It appeared to be tethered to their backyard barbecue. I would urge that effort be made to allow the cell tower to be located as it was at one time suggested further back, and if that can be achieved, I'm sure that there will be much less public outcry against it, and there will be a major service to the community. Thank you.
Johnny Leach, followed by Claude Dunn.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and board members. My name is Johnny Leach. I live at 1701 Bragg Road. I've been a member of this county all my life. Without being subject to question here. I've been involved in public safety. We have found numerous times that we've been unable to communicate safely and effectively. I had a lot of things here to talk about. Communication is needed in the western part of the county. If this tower saves one life on the river, on Ely's Ford Road, in the subdivision, that's what we need in the western part of the county. Thank you.
Claude Dunn, followed by Craig DeDecker.
Claude Dunn, 9743 Ely's Ford Road, speak on behalf of Faith and Freedom Ministries. My comments tonight are more in the order of morality than feelings. The American system of government is built on the understanding that all authority for government action comes from the people. Because all authority for government action comes from the people, and because we, the people, can't delegate a power or authority we don't have to our representatives in government, then we have a system of what's called limited government. Those in government have taken an oath of allegiance to this system. The oath is to protect us by not letting government do anything that's wrong or immoral for the individual to do. For example, in our local school system, they teach that bullying is wrong. Someone or a gang to compel someone to do something with their lunch money, their property, is wrong. It makes no difference if the gang is made up of a 99% majority of the school population. Compulsion or force against one's will makes the action wrong. I've heard comments that we're a democracy, majority should rule. But actually, democracy is an illegal form of government in America. We're a republic. Go back to our pledge to the flag of the United States, for a republic for which it stands. Republic is limited majority rule, where people have rights that even majority can't vote away. The person being bullied has a protector, a bodyguard, that protects the fellow student from being bullied. We call them a hero. And that is the proper role of government. Many of you have alluded to already that you feel like that this Catholic company is being bullied. People are trying to take control of their property and they have no business placing their hands on it. It is wrong to use force of law to compel any citizens to do or not do anything with their property, even if 99% of the fellow citizens want it. In this case, your vote is your instrument of force. God, the creator of the universe, grants mankind the liberty to pursue his own happiness in whatever way and by whatever means he pleases, without asking the consent or consulting inclination of any other man, provided he keeps within the bounds of God's moral law. Within these bounds, he may govern his actions and dispose of his property and person as he thinks proper, nor has any man or any number of men a right to restrain him in the exercise of this liberty, or punish or call him to account for using it. This is in a sermon by Simeon Howard to our troops in the Revolutionary War. The Civil War was fought for the same purpose, to protect our rights. My great-grandfather fought that war. That's what we need to be about today. So the only question left is, are you going to give up, are you going to live up to your oath of allegiance to limit government and be the hero, as many of you indicate you will, the protector of individual rights, or perjure yourself and play the bully by voting against the tower? Thank you.
Craig DeDecker, followed by Greg Rains.
Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight to you and the planners. I thank you all. I represent Mineral Springs Plantation. I'm the president of the Homeowner Association. And I appreciate the fact in the presentation that it was mentioned that we had a vote on it and there was an overwhelming majority. To give you a sense of that vote, we had one person in favor, 49 opposed, 5 abstentions, and 9 voting present in that particular vote. During that 2-hour debate on Monday night, which was a healthy and useful debate, it was mentioned that there were 2 other sites, and I believe those sites were mentioned in tonight's presentation, although I'm not 100% correct because I couldn't see the monitor that closely based on where I was sitting. So that was good news. So there is some alternate sites for that could be used with this one. And then on Sunday afternoon, and it has been mentioned that there could be some potential hazardous waste problems at the sawmill, and that causes us some concern for a lot of obvious reasons, and I'm sure that'll be looked at in the coming days. And we would hope, in fact, that the county takes a look at that and ensures there is absolutely no hazardous materials there that could cause harm to us or the reservoir that we should be protecting as well. If, in fact, that the county approves this application and it is found to have any hazardous material there, I would also hope that the county would require that CWS and Verizon help pay for some of the cleanup that's required in that particular area so that we can get those problems mitigated. With that, I would hope that you would vote against this and use one of the alternate sites that that are out there, and because I don't think there's anybody in this room that would object to cell phone coverage. I think everybody here is for cell phone coverage, but an alternate site would be much more preferred. Thank you for your time.
Greg Rains, representing the Isaac Walton League, followed by George Wells.
Mr. Chairman and Planning Commission members, I'm Greg Rains, President of Isaac Walton League. We have approximately 900 members, which fluctuates every year. And we rely tremendously on communication. Our members are from all around the entire area, surrounding counties and so forth. It's crucial that we have better communication. We have a challenge with that. We have a lot of black holes, if you wish, going on any road within 5 miles. It gets better some as you go in many other directions, but right around the Isaac Walton League area, Fawn Lake, 621, 600, just anywhere around in that area, it's a very difficult challenge to sometimes communicate with not only me and others of the board and just different members. When we have venues such as our Dog Mart and when we have events that have vendors to come, and sometimes we have several vendors, well, they come from other areas and other links of travel as well, and it's difficult sometimes to communicate things. Sometimes I have to walk out on our porch and stand in one position just to get signal myself, and I live on Benchmark Road. So it's issues all around, and all our members extremely support having better cell communications. It's really how we mainly communicate there. It's an issue that it just means a lot, not only for safety constraints. Sometimes we have events that have rescue vehicles there for many reasons. And the same thing happens. You got to have better communication. For 900 members plus, it's a crucial issue, and we certainly support all the efforts we can to get that tower there. And I was assured, I had a paper with what I saw that showed us we will have much better signal. And we, as an organization, we need it, and I hope you will support it. Thank you.
George Wells, followed by Harry Hopkins.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, voters, I speak for those who can't speak for themselves because they are dead. Some are still out on those fields, the portion of land in question. It is not right to do away with the bravery of the attackers and the defenders. The general of the Confederate Army, Kilquit, came into the salient with orders to block Ely's Ford Road to keep the Federals from using it in their retreat. General Farrell Tyler defended it. And so General Cocos did not make it to the ford. It is not right that we plant a tower in the chest of those that are still buried out in that portion of woods. Some of the members of the Confederate forces who fought there came back after the war to farm in that land. They are also buried out there in unmarked graves. To paraphrase President Reagan, please, members of the commission, tear up those plans. Thank you.
Harry Hopkins, followed by R. Scott Pugh.
That's a hard one to follow. My name is Harry Hopkins. I live in Mineral Springs Plantation. I support better cell service for the health, safety, and welfare of our community members. I used to have a friend in Mineral Springs Plantation. His name was Greg. He was on a camping trip with his son in the Washington National Forest 2 years ago. He fell over from a heart attack, and his 14-year-old son had to run to the top of a mountain to get cell service. Our community is on the shore of a beautiful Hunting Run reservoir. Cell service in Mineral Springs is spotty and unreliable, and we have lots of people coming to use the lake. I'd hate for someone on the lake to need emergency service and the cell call could not go through because of bad cell connections. When the tower was 4 times farther off Ely's Ford Road, I was for it. But that being said, I cannot support the proposed location of this tower. It is divisive for our community, and there is less contentious locations available elsewhere. Thank you.
R. Scott Pugh, followed by David Morris.
Hi, I'm R. Scott Pugh. I'm the attorney for the Spotsylvania Historical Association, and I'm the representative of this hearing tonight. I handed out a packet that has my presentation. I hope you all have it before you. And the first thing I noted in my presentation is, of course, the county code provisions, which state that the goals of this section are to require wireless telecommunications facilities to be sited in a way that minimizes infringement upon and degradation of the historical resources of the county and adjacent properties. The code also states every effort should be made to minimize adverse impacts on such resources in the siting of telecommunication facilities. This site is directly across from a Spotsylvania Historical Association, not National Park Service, Spotsylvania Historical Association wayside that has 4 plaques. And I had, you can look at the way, number 3 is shows you where the wayside is and where the plaques are located, shows you where the Catlett lumber is, and shows you the balloon of where the site is. Obviously, this is going to impact upon this site. And the four plaques are shown on number 4. And the first plaque, there's a map in the upper right corner that shows that the site is where the battle is depicted. And in the top right is the second plaque, as you go across the 4 plaques, and that states that the well-preserved fortifications are still present in the woods at the site of Colquitt's and Nichols' attack. The bottom left is a 3rd plaque, and that's as a photograph at the top right corner shows the tower site is where the battle is depicted. Now the 4th plaque, which shows the battle at 1 p.m., and I put that in a separate photo, and that's number 5. That clearly shows Ely's Ford Road, where you are here, and shows that the battle was across the road there, exactly where this site is located. The historical importance of this site is addressed in detail in a 10-page letter from the association dated May 28, 2014, and 15 attachments, which are collectively provided to you all as Agenda Packet C5. My office's short summary, which was provided in February, is number 6 of the items presented. Now, the historical importance of the site has been acknowledged by the National Park Service, and that's number 7. The tower would be immediately adjacent to Colquitt's attack, and Hooker's last lines, I'm reading from their letter, zones is identified in the county's related lands database. And that database is actually attachment 6 to the association's letter. And according to the 3 maps on the plaques, the site is not only adjacent to, but actually a part of Colquitt's attack. Now, the County Planning Commission staff report bases its recommendation as to no historical issues based upon an email of the State Historical Preservation Office that's dated December 15, 2014, which is also cited, and that's number 8 of the presentation, which is cited in the application statement of justification, which is number 9. The actual email is number 10. That's what they're citing. If you look at the actual email, what they're talking about is that it does not, we believe, the email states, we believe that the undertaking will have no adverse effect on historic properties, specifically the Wilderness Battlefield and the Chancellorsville Battlefield. Of course, the undertaking will not have a direct adverse effect within the official boundaries of the 2 battlefields. And of course, since the site cannot be easily seen from within the official boundaries of the 2 battlefields, it does not have any adverse visual effects in the 2 battlefields. But Community Wireless Structures made it very clear that the state office was to focus on the effects of the actual battlefields themselves. And that is addressed in number 12, which is their letter to the department, saying you've got to focus on the direct effect upon the actual battlefields. But you need to trust your own eyes. This undertaking will definitely have an adverse effect upon the 199-foot effect upon the wayside. And I would ask you to consider the slogan for Spotsylvania County, Spotsylvania, Virginia, crossroads of the Civil War. If the county approves this site, it certainly will be permitting permanent damage, directly and visually, to a significant part of those crossroads, directly across from a wayside, that with plaques that describe that significance. I haven't done all my items in my presentation. I'd ask you to look at those when you can. Thank you very much.
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
So, when you as a historic preservation advocate stated an objection to this tower, is this objection based on the fact, what exactly is it? The fact that this tower didn't exist 150 years ago?
No, as stated in my presentation, as shown on the plaques and the maps, this tower infringes upon an actual place where the attack occurred. And of course, the Planning Commission, under its own code sections, is supposed to be specifically looking at these, and the Spotsylvania Historic Association says, and I realize it's a difficult area to put a tower, but this one imposes directly, as shown on those plaques, where a very important battle was fought, in fact, where over 6,000 people died.
Okay, so does the association also object to any other modern introductions, such as automobiles, in the park or in the area upon which this battle occurred?
I think there's a difference between a 199-foot industrial tower
and 60,000 cars a day?
Sir,
I just wanted to
the association has problems with a 199-foot industrial tower,
but not with cars,
over the top of a wayside, which clearly shows that that particular area, if you stand in the wayside and you look where the battle was fought, that's going to have an impact upon viewing that area. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David Morris, followed by Brad Meacham.
Good evening. My name is David Morris. I live at 10119 Ely's Ford Road. I'm in favor of this tower because I've had very limited cell phone reception where I live at. That's it. Thank you.
Brad Meacham, followed by Carmine DeSpirito.
Good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Brad Meacham. I reside at 13350 Golden Oaks Drive in Spotsylvania County. It's a Golden Oaks subdivision right next to TC Catlett. I'll keep it real simple. My concern was just reviewing some information that there's possibility of some type of contamination next door. Just simply would like that looked at, make sure it's good to go, it's clean. If not, remediation, get it taken care of. I don't particularly want to look at the cellular tower myself. Most of them have strobe lights. I like where we live. It's quiet, it's dark, it's very nice. I'd like to continue to do so. Perhaps another site would be in order. I have interacted with some of the CWS folks, or the tower folks, if you will. Information was given to me that I requested. I did request to talk to one of their engineers and did not get a phone call, but I did get a phone call from sales. It was kind of ironic. They told me how their phone service would help me in business, et cetera, and I just told the young man that my Sprint phone works everywhere in the house. Thank you very much. But I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Carmine DeSpirito, followed by David Bailey.
Good evening, Board. My name is Carmine DeSpirito, live at 13821 Hunting Run Drive. When I was president of the board approximately a little over 2 years ago, we had our annual meeting, and a resident got up and asked if the board could explore the feasibility of getting a better signal for the community. Now, we had a fiduciary duty, which we did. We formed a committee at that meeting, a couple of volunteers. They did their homework, and the areas they looked around, they finally, with the tower company, settled at the Catholic property. Now, all the people living in Mineral Springs, including the people boating on the reservoir, we need a better 911 signal. It's a safety factor. Whether you're walking around, whether you're off the subdivision, we don't have a good signal there. I know at my house we have nothing. Once in a while I might get one signal, one bar. Terrible. What about the kids in school? They try to get a hold of parents, parents try to get a hold of them, no signal. Now, the police, sheriff department, the EMTs, the fire department, the park rangers, they all need a better signal. When the rangers go into the woods or our area, they have no signal. It's a safety factor. Now, we were neutral. When I had the board, we were a neutral position. Now, I think the Catlett property is a good place for that tower. I'd like to see the tower up there. Now, I sent a letter to the tower company. Mr. Murray here knows about it. It's a business zone property. And the issue was 387 feet, the original proposal to erect the tower. And initially they said no, they couldn't do it. Then within the same month, I got a letter right here that they agreed to move it back 536 feet. Then we didn't know they had moved it forward 150 feet. This goes into this idea about the Parks Department, et cetera, which I agree with you, Mr. Commissioner. You know, they take every little inch of soil and they want to tell everybody what to do with it. Now, I'm a Civil War buff myself. I'm all for that. But I think sometimes the Parks Department gets a little out of hand in what they do. What I'm asking is to proceed with this. Let the tower company go forward, and would you reconsider the initial area or moving it back further? I think we'd all appreciate that. I think it'll work smoother for the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
David Bailey, followed by Susan Catlett.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. My name is David Bailey. I'm an attorney at law. I specialize in environmental and land use law, and I represent some of the citizens living around the Catlett site. I don't appear before you tonight to talk about cell tower transmissions or the Civil War areas. I appear to talk to you about the environmental issues at this site. And I'm going to focus at the end of my presentation about a legal issue which I think your council is going to have to address and this commission is going to have to address, but it's very real. First of all, I want you to know that we filed 3 different items, one with your planning commissioner, one with your zoning administrator. We filed a very substantial packet which we believe shows that the Catlett Lumber Company has expanded beyond its boundaries and lost its rights to its non-conforming use. It's all documented. I'm not going to go through it tonight. Your zoning administrator can look at it and decide what to do. We'll decide what to do when he decides what to do. The second document we filed, which contains much of the same information, was filed with the Planning Department, and we asked that it may be made part of a record of this proceedings. That document talks a lot about the environmental conditions at the Catlett site, and it focuses on a lot of ordinance provisions in your ordinance about issuing special use permits to facilities which are not in compliance with existing zoning or environmental laws. And that's that package, and that's before you tonight. Thirdly, we have filed a package with the Department of Environmental Quality, and that package seeks to obtain proper enforcement of the environmental laws on the Catlett lumber site. That petition to them was filed Monday night by Federal Express, so they didn't even have it till Tuesday. So whatever comments they've made before now were done without the information contained in that petition. I stand by all of those petitions because, as a lawyer, I have to make sure that everything is documented. I'm not relying on somebody's opinions. I'm not relying on their thoughts. And if you have a chance to look at those documents, I did not give 1,500 pages of documents to you 2 days before this board meeting for you to decide. But if you want to take a look at them, it's all there. It's documented thoroughly by photographs, by reference to legal documents and so forth, the whole 9 yards. What I do want to talk to you about tonight, though, is a legal issue, which I think your council is going to have to decide. I don't think the members of this commission are going to be able to decide that issue. And I apologize to your council for not having a legal memorandum ready for him tonight to look at before this meeting, but I just could not do it in that time. I will have it ready before the Board of Supervisors meeting. That issue is very simply stated. The Catlett Lumber Company is a non-conforming use. They have a right to that non-conforming use. They have a constitutional right to the protection of that use as long as it exists in the manner that it existed before you enacted zoning ordinances. Once they expand or change that use in any number of different ways, they lose that constitutional right of protection and they come under your zoning ordinance. The Supreme Court has said very clearly, if you change the character of a site, not the land use necessarily, but the character of a site, you lose that right to nonconformity. And the last issue, because I see my time is running out, is I don't believe, there's not really clear law about this, but I don't believe you can issue a special use permit to a non-conforming site. Because by doing so, you change the character of the site by that very action, and you destroy its non-conforming exemption. So I don't think it can be done, and I think you cause a big problem if you do it, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Susan Catlett, followed by Valerie Johns.
Good evening. I'm Susan Catlett. I live at 9930 Ely's Ford Road. And while I am a member of the Catlett family, I'm not here representing the mill tonight. Rather, I'm a member of the community who would be strongly impacted by this cell tower. My home is located just a few miles from the tower site. I'm a high school teacher here in Spotsylvania County. I've taught for 8 years at Riverbend High School. I also teach 2 night classes at the University of Mary Washington. This means that I regularly work at home. I plan lessons, I grade papers, and I attempt to communicate with my students and parents. But I have to do this with no internet access. I live so far off the road that cable internet is not an option for me. I've tried satellite internet, and it's as frustrating as dial-up. I often find myself on the front porch holding my iPhone in the air, hoping that an email answering a student's question gets sent or responding to a parent's concern gets sent. Sometimes I even go to school on Sundays just to access the internet. With the installation of a proposed cell tower, I would have the option of using my phone as a hotspot, as would many members of the community. Because of the lack of a reliable cell signal where I live, I also have to maintain a home phone line. I have the most very basic service. My phone only rings. I have no voicemail. I have no three-way calling, no call backup. I don't have any of those things, and it costs me $45 a month, which adds up to over $500 a year. And for me, that's 2 months' worth of groceries. I'm just one member of the community in one home who would be positively affected by the tower, and I understand that it's not beautiful. I understand that there's an aesthetic issue. However, as I drive home, parallel along the road, there are power lines. And I accept that those are there. They don't disturb the scenery for me because I understand that they're necessary for the way we live now. And this cell tower is a necessity. It's not a luxury. Thank you so much.
Valerie Johns, followed by Catherine Grant.
Hello, my name is Valerie Johns. I've lived in Mineral Springs Plantation for 25 years. I'm one of the first people that has lived in that community. I moved there because it was a bucolic, lovely, quiet community where there were no cell towers, no things that might disturb the appearance of being bucolic. I am concerned because, for one thing, there's been people who have said that it's a wireless dead zone. When I first moved there, it was a wireless dead zone. But at this point, after years of trying different cell services, I moved from Verizon to AT&T. I have perfect cell phone coverage. And I moved from my husband just recently, who's a physician and has to have cell phone coverage. He moved from having a Samsung smartphone to a iPhone, and it's perfect in our house. So sometimes it's a matter of switching your coverage or switching your phone, and you may get better service. Now, I know that there are others further around surrounding our community that do not get very good coverage, but the location of this tower, just walking around the corner from my house, is going to be a huge, unaesthetic appearing edifice right around the corner. And you know, I'm sure many of you wouldn't want that staring you in the eye as you walk the block with your dog. And I understand how others don't have the coverage and the service that they need, but perhaps there would be a better location for this tower. I've heard that there are a couple other locations. I also am worried about the hazardous material that may be in this area from some of the new studies that I've read that have come out from an environmental firm in Richmond. And I worry about our groundwater. We have well water in our neighborhood, and if there is hazardous material on this property, and it could pose a threat to our well water and also to the Hunting Run Reservoir because it is downstream from the location where you want to place this tower. So I think there are other things to consider. It's not just the aesthetic beauty. It's not just some of our neighbors who may not have the right coverage, the right phones, the right way to check through different ways of getting better coverage. But it's also, there's other problems involved with the environment there. And I thank you.
Thank you.
Catherine Grant, followed by Alexandra Fasten-Leotis.
I live very close to the Williams, and I guess I'm a lucky one because I have perfect service. I can use my cell phone in any room in my house. I understand others are not that lucky, but and they do need this service, but I think they could put it someplace else. I think one of the people from our area has a spot that might be a good place for it where it wouldn't impact everybody. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Alexandra Fasten-Leotis, followed by Costas Fasten-Leotis.
Hello, my name is Alexandra, and I live on 5th Corpse Lane in Mineral Springs Plantation. From the front of my house and even my bedroom window, I was able to see the balloons that they put up. And I'm also very concerned about the waste on the sawmill and the possibility of contaminating the water. And I can't really imagine that tourists who visit the battlefields would want to stare directly at a cell tower that's almost 200 feet above the skyline when they go to read the placards across the street from the Catlett property. This cell tower is not really compatible with the character or integrity of the area.
Thank you.
Costas Fasinliotis, followed by Tanya White. Okay.
Hello, my name is Tanya White. Just a little short background. I'm a physician in the area as well as the Rappahannock Emergency Medical Services Operational Medical Director. So I handle all the counties, Stafford, all the way to Lady Smith, certainly this Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania, and Orange. And this is mostly a volunteer position. I'm just saying this out there because I have a vested interest in emergency. I live in Mineral Springs Plantation. The cell tower would directly affect me as I look out straight through my front window. Through my door, there's a little tiny window that I saw the balloon every time I walked anywhere in my front of my house. It was not only a huge eyesore, but sad because it's such a beautiful area. I also have cell phone coverage. I have AT&T, and I run throughout the neighborhood, and I don't have an issue. There are certain shoddy areas at the very end, and I do believe people further on don't have good cell phone coverage. I would not be opposed to having the cell tower moved further back onto the Catlett property, one of the sites that they had spoken about, 500 feet, where it wouldn't impact neighbors, their home values, their sense of life, and how they come home to their home and want it the way that they bought it when they first purchased it. I also read the geoenvironmental report and saw pictures with the oil spills, the tires. There was some old decaying things that said lead containing. As a physician, that's very concerning to me. Certainly I have children. My kids go to the school right there across from where the cell tower would be, and any lead leaching into the water is a great concern as that affects IQ. So I would ask that you do look at that very carefully and make sure that there isn't any fire waste and that that is cleared up and cleaned up if that is the case. You know, I run in the battlefield. I love walking through the battlefield trails. Our own community itself has strict guidelines on what we are allowed to build and how we have no electrical wires in our neighborhood. We can't have a dish outside of our neighborhood. Visitors come to our neighborhood as well. And so this would affect that aesthetic beauty of visitors of the battlefield that also come to our own neighborhood, come and see the placards right outside. So I thank you very much for your consideration.
Stavros Fasinliotis, followed by Sam Foltz. Sam Foltz, followed by David Stadoulis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the Commission as well. I would just like to address this from the aspect of a parent with school-age children. I have 3 school-age children and 1 college-age child living at home. And much like Ms. Catlett spoke about, we have issues with internet service, and our way of life has changed technologically, not only in this county, but in the country and in the world. Internet has become a tool that is absolutely necessary for continuing education. Even in Spotsylvania County, my children are often required to watch a YouTube lecture or do research on the internet. I've been a lifelong resident of Ely's Ford. Of my 46 years, I've lived on Overlook Road for 44 of those years. So I am certainly not new to the aesthetics of the parks and the sanctity of the parks, and it certainly is not to be diminished. But as even you, Mr. Chairman, you know, have spoken about, progress moves forward and infrastructure moves forward as well. Roads have been built through those parks, and we don't complain about those roads because we need them to travel back and forth. We don't complain about the electrical power lines that run through there because we need electricity to our houses, and we are in a day or an era in which we need internet service coverage. I live right on the border of the county and the Rapidan River, and I am in a dead zone. There is very little, not even 1 bar of coverage for any carrier. at our house. I am forced to use internet via satellite, and the only way I can get that internet is to get permission from my neighbors to cut their trees down. One day that's not going to happen, I'm sure, and it certainly is not affordable for me to have the county franchisor for cable to bring it a quarter mile down our driveway either. So affordable internet is not available. So the cell tower certainly brings about the ability for me to bring internet to my house and to bring it to my children and make that available. We understand the Park Service and the neighbors that they are. This commission has certainly dealt with the Park Service. We can't even get a turn lane. I mean, we don't have to remind anybody of that, but it can be difficult. But progress has to move forward. Our children need a proper education. We need to be able to provide that to them as well. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
David Stadoulis, followed by Robert Thomas.
David Stadoulis. I live in Mineral Springs on Combax Mill Drive. Just wanted to say thanks for not butchering my name. You're one of the few who get it right. I think everybody is, more or less everybody here is for better cell phone service coverage. I think it'll help all of us. I don't know if there's a way to, if you can bring up the map again. Do you have access to bring up the map where we had the red dot?
No, we don't.
No, okay. But I find it very difficult to understand how moving this tower 300 feet further back off the road as it was in its original location is going to have such dire impact on the national parks. Where it will go, I would probably venture to say will be an area that is cleaned up on the Catlett property once CWS gets done with that area. So it'll probably be an improvement to that location of the lumberyard. The other thing is there will be a reduction in property values for the people that live closest to this. The reason I originally lived in Estates of Chancellorsville, which is right across the street from Mineral Springs. We had great Verizon coverage there. I had Verizon I had coverage in my basement there. So, it's, let me just go back to the property values. So the reason we live in this area is because we like the natural surroundings. We like the large lots. We like it to be out in the country, even though that we're close to town. And there will be reduction in values. And when comps are done, that's when it'll affect the other property values in the area, even the properties that don't see the tower. So that's a concern. And when you reduce the property values, your tax base goes down and your tax receipts are going to go down. The last thing is, obviously, it's important to a lot of people here, a lot of us who live in Mineral Springs. We want better coverage. We're just asking that it goes back to the original location further off the street. I think even the people who see it are in agreement with that. And it's important to us, and you can tell because we're here. If it's so important to the National Park Service, why aren't they here?
Thank you.
And the last person I have signed up is Robert Thomas.
Evening, my name is Robert Thomas. I own 35 acres at 15212 Spotswood Furnace Road, just on the other side of the reservoir. I don't live there yet. I have it subdivided, and I hope that my family might someday be there. I speak tonight in favor of this tower. I can tell you from personal experience that the reception in my area is poor to zero to poor, depending on where you are. When I'm working there by myself or inside, I often have none at all. I can say that driving on the roads around and visiting other places in the area, it's the same. But that isn't the major thing that I'd like to try to offer you. I've been a real estate broker for 25 years in Virginia, and I can tell you that for every person who thinks that the property values will go down because they won't have the same ambience or beauty that they had before, there's another person that will come as a buyer who will look at that tower and say, oh, I'm in the 21st century, finally. So my anticipation is that property values in the entire area will go up. What you can do to help the folks in the immediate area, I don't know. But I can tell you that as the owner of land on the other side of the road, if for any reason it just doesn't work out there, I can give you guaranteed a place where we will welcome them with flowers. Now, there was one problem about moving it around in its present area, being near the battlefield. That is sensitive to me also. I find the proximity to the historic sites here, because my ancestors were in the same war and on the same side as some of the other folks here. I take that seriously too, but I do believe that they have worked hard with the Park Service and the Catlets and the people who know this matter, not as amateurs but as professionals, to find a good compromised location. So if that's the case, let's not let the best be the enemy of the good. Let's go with it and get it done.
Thank you very much. Did anyone else who hadn't signed up wish to make a public statement for the commission? Very well. Seeing none, then I call this open public hearing to a close. We heard some wonderful testimony, and it's really exciting to me when so many people in their community love their homes and their area so much that they're willing to come out on a Wednesday night when there are certainly other things they could be doing other than coming to the public hearing of the Planning Commission. We heard a couple things tonight, and I appreciate the last presentation too. We've dealt with cell towers for the nearly 3.5 years that I've been here, and there seems to be this myth about property values being impacted by the presence of cell towers. And there is not any study that I'm aware of that shows that any of these property values are impacted. It certainly would be welcomed if there was a study of that nature. The second thing that bothers me about this whole event this evening and some of the misunderstandings especially relates to the fact that opponents to the application have only in the last few days really started expressing their concerns, and yet, as we learned earlier from the applicant, this has been, and I knew it was a lengthy process, but they've actually documented that it's a 14-month process of approvals just related to the National Park Service. And hopefully, had there been more input earlier, some of these issues could have been dealt with to everyone's satisfaction, and I believe ultimately we can. Third, we heard someone speak on behalf of the dear departed who fought for both sides of in the battle of the 1860s, a battle known as the Civil War, and I think a lot of people forget that, especially people on the side of Virginia, that these soldiers fought for property rights. They went out to defend the states' rights. And while some of the rights that they were defending were clearly wrong, but by and large, the desire of local government was at the heart of the battle, and many of these brave soldiers died for that very reason. And I would suspect that in this day and age, if they were around, that by and large, if they were philosophically today what they fought for 150 years ago, that they would be fighting for the Catlett right to use their property as hosting a cell tower. And that, and I'm sure that General Lee and his men would have loved to have cellular coverage 150 years ago, and perhaps a few automatic firearms to help repel the invading hordes. So anyway, we won't go there. So that's kind of where I am about this, and the chair will entertain a motion related to the application. I'm sorry. I just totally I still get so excited about this, but if the applicant wished to refute anything I had to say, they're welcome, or anybody else, for 5 more minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know that I'll use 5 minutes. I did have a couple thoughts from some of the comments. Verizon is here, and Paul Dugan could address this question of where they need service, why they want to be on this spot. There's been a suggestion there are other sites. This is a very difficult area for the reasons we all heard tonight. It's hallowed ground in a certain area. Other parts are still in the battlefield. Residences have sprung up. Those residences use cell phones. I mean, it's not easy, but Verizon is trying to cover north into the neighborhoods all the way down to 3, the Ely's Ford and Route 3 intersection. And if you want to learn more on that, Paul Dugan can speak to it. This question of moving it back 300 feet, I mean, it's it's a federal mandate. If you want it, if you love it, if you really want a tower, but you want a tower 300 feet back, there will be no tower. Actually, there could be a tower. It would be built, but there'd be no tenants, and if there are no tenants, there's no service. So it'd be a naked structure, because the licensees are federal licensees, and they can't go on a non-conforming structure, and it's non-conforming if it doesn't conform with the historic mandate. Well, I didn't make that up. I mean, I make it up. That's just the environment we're in, and it makes it difficult.
Well, again, we think that the arrogance of the National Park Service is just unbelievable, because if they wanted to defend this, why isn't there someone here from them hearing from you? And I understand that the original application was in the other site. So we still have issues, and federal mandates are just totally out of control. We won't go there either.
I ask rhetorically, does 300 feet make a huge difference, and from where?
Well, your application originally was in the other location.
I understand, and that red line, we've learned a lot about that red line. And
the arbitrary red line that some bureaucrat drew.
We are inside it, and now we are outside it. The final point is there is reference being made to the view from the wayside. The wayside is on private property. It was built with private property, with private money. It's not part of the Chancellorsville battlefield.
Tim, if the National Park Service signed off on it with the cell tower 300 feet back, would that then meet your federal requirements?
Now, I'm looking at the thing for a slide. I mean, the Department of Historic Resources makes an opinion. They base their opinion on the input from consulting parties, National Park Service, American Battlefield Protection Program, Civil War Trust, and any other party. It was a public comment session. I think some people in this room actually commented to the Department of Historic Resources. So it's the DHR that does a ruling in the Commonwealth of Virginia. The National Park Service is a consulting party to them, but anyone in this room going to lobby the National Park Service won't change things. That line is there, and it's there. This is about, I guess the question is, some people mention the health concerns. I don't know if health underlies some of the concerns expressed tonight. We did hear a lot about visual impacts. I would just remind everyone, it wasn't asked directly of some people who live on Fifth Court, but what part of the structure will you see? And we're not talking about 60, 80, 100 feet. We're talking about some little portion, 15 feet, maybe 10 feet, sticking above the trees in the winter or in the spring. The foliage, everyone would agree, is not at its full point yet. We take another, put the balloon up again, what do you see from Fifth Corp on June 1? And I don't think you see hardly anything at that point. So, and that, okay, 6 months a year. There's some part of the year where you look through the branches and you could see some small portion. Yep. That's all I had to say, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, over the past 24 to 48 hours, I personally have received a significant amount of information from all the parties concerned with this application. I'm sure my fellow commission members have as well. I have tried my best to get through all of that information, understand everybody's issues, and quite honestly, it's been a challenge given my 7 to 5 job as well. So in addition to that, I'm going to make a motion to table this for 30 days. And the reason for that is, with all due respect to the applicant, I'm going to ask for 1 more month to work this out with the various agencies, because there's other information that has come to my attention today that I would like to explore with the Board of Supervisors representative, Tim McLaughlin. I would ask for patience for 30 more days. I respect the comments from the public with the location of this tower, but I also understand the other issues that go with that. Additionally, I'm hearing comments about contamination of soils and groundwater. I have yet to see any documentation, whether it be through DEQ or some other professional who is certified in this, to demonstrate that there's any contamination at all. The test results I've seen at this point, it is a non-contaminated site. To go to a contaminated site is a huge leap. I'm just not seeing any documentation or evidence to suggest otherwise. Also, in regards to wells and water quality, I still haven't seen any groundwater studies done to suggest that there will be any impact at all from this site or from the operation of the sawmill. So, Mr. Chairman, I would ask for patience from all the parties to this application, but I would like to make a motion to table this for 30 days so that I can continue to work through some of these issues.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any other comments or questions?
May I just clarify the date? Would that be June 3rd? That would actually be 28 days. Is
That's
that
fine.
what you intended?
That's fine.
The motion, and do you agree to the amendment? For seconding it? All right. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, then let's vote. A vote in favor of the motion delays to June 3rd our addressing this for decision. It is unanimous, 6-0. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, again for your patience. Next item on the agenda is another public hearing, SUP 15-0002. Another cell tower.
Most of these are personal.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, Patrick White, Planner 3, Planning Department. May I please have the computer screen? Thank you very much. This case, SUP 15002, is also known as the Dominion Virginia Power Communication Tower.
If our guests this evening could conduct their conversations in the hall or outside, that would be greatly appreciated as we attempt to continue the conduct of the business.
Pick up my granddaughter.
I'm leaving.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The proposal is located at 11100 Gordon Road. It is on a 13.62 acre property. This proposal is similar to the other case, but there are some significant differences. Again, this tower is for a 199-foot tall tower. It has a 4-foot tall lightning rod attached to the top of it. We will discuss some of the other differences in a moment. The property is located about 1,000 feet west of an existing church known as the Salem Field Community Church. Gordon Road is located here running north to south. The property and all immediate surrounding properties are zoned RU or rural. The property contains a future land use designation of institutional. The proposed tower is a microwave tower. It's identified with the bright orange circle on the GDP before you on your monitor. A substantial difference between this tower and the previous one we heard. This is a lattice tower. Its design is quite different from that of a monopole. However, similar to the previous case, this one also is designed with breakpoints, where the previous tower had a fall zone of 20 feet due to its design. This one is designed to completely collapse onto itself. It has a 0 fall zone, which is substantially different.
Excuse me, may
Yes, sir.
I ask a question?
Of course.
You're talking about these fall zones, and
Yes,
you're
sir.
talking about these things that are self-collapsing. Isn't that inherently weakening the structure to make it to fall down? I mean, it's like these cars today. When I first started driving, you could run a car in this wall here and you might bump your head. But this junk we got out on the road now is designed to totally destroy itself by collapsing.
We brought a specialist tonight.
And
who might
I'm
be
just
able to
curious
talk
about
that.
this.
Would you mind discussing the fall zone tech, sir? Mr. Condilis?
Well, I don't know that's something that we can have a
Yeah, I'm
lot of
just
control
curious.
over, but if
It's just a question and observation.
yeah, we'll hear from him in a few minutes.
All right. It's quite all right. The applicant has provided us, again, with a NEPA documentation. They've provided us with a TOWARE certification. The TOWARE is a system that identifies whether or not a tower is going to be required to be submitted to the FCC if it's too tall or if it's within a flight path. This tower is not, like the previous tower, it will not have to be lit at nighttime. We've also received a notification from the State Historic Preservation Officer stating there will be no direct impact. We've also received the engineering documentation from a radio frequency engineer stating that it's within federal limits. We have forwarded this case to the county's technology consultant, ATC, Atlantic Technology Consultant, who concurs that the project is approvable. We brought the case before the Cable TV and Telecommunication Commission. They made a similar recommendation as to the previous case, that it have a remote lighting package. Unlike a cellular communication tower, this tower is different. Its intent is to relay communication not with many people, but just 2 different sites. This tower will host 3 microwave antennas that are pointed, 2 pointed towards the Fredericksburg office, 1 pointed towards a Ladysmith power plant. The applicants have identified a security concern at this property. It may look familiar because the project was recently a subject of a special use application to expand the footprint of the facility, as well as a variance to allow this property to have 20-foot tall security wall built around it. This microwave tower is located within that plan, within that facility. Which brings up an interesting question, or something worth noting. You'll see on the GDP there is an area of potential co-location equipment. That's with a caveat, that being that the co-location of either county communication facilities or cellular facilities may come at an increased expense on the property due to the control of access within a secure facility. We could certainly condition the project to allow better access. However, in staff's opinion, that makes a critical piece of infrastructure weaker by doing that. We have received documentation from pastors at the Salem Fields Community Church. They did not oppose the proposal. Staff found that the proposal strengthens the electrical infrastructure. It met our special use standards of review, is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and recommends approval with 4 conditions. The first of which being that it be completed in concurrence with the special use, with the GDP dated May 29th, 2015, that the county have the first right of refusal should we need to locate emergency equipment on the tower. Again, that the final site design be in compliance with our telecommunication ordinance, and that should the microwave relays or other facilities to be mounted on the antenna in the future cause interference, that the applicant work diligently and expeditiously with the Cable TV and Telecommunications Commission to find a resolution. The applicants are present, and I believe they have a brief PowerPoint for you as well.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, since we have our staff here, there's a school located on Smith Station. How far away from this site is that? That's county-owned property.
Well,
why isn't it considered?
Yes, it is county-owned property. It isn't being considered because of the nature of the communications at this facility.
What does that mean?
It's not something they want, that they are seeking to have off-site. They want this tower within their secured perimeter.
They already have a facility there, is that correct?
Yes, sir, an electrical substation.
Never mind, thank you.
No problem.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Jonathan Schultes with Burns & McDonnell, here on behalf of my client, Dominion Virginia Power. I'm joined this evening by Mr. James Beasley of Dominion and Mr. William Hayden of Valmont Engineering, and he's the gentleman that designed the tower and had those notes with regard to the fall zone included in your package. It will be available for questioning here after the presentation, should you all require it. Mr. White did an excellent job summing up in his staff report and his presentation the basic tenets of our application this evening. There are just a few things I'd like to add, and then I'm available for questioning along with the folks that I have in the audience. The genesis of this project comes down from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and their desire for utilities across the country, to strengthen electric infrastructure at critical electric transmission facilities. What I mean by critical electric transmission facilities are those substations that have 500 kV assets or 500,000 volt transmission lines. These are very, very important not only to the regional power grid of the area, but to the power grid along the East Coast. These substations are very important, and Dominion, of course, wants to comply with these FERC and NERC mandates in order to substantially secure these stations. You're all familiar with this project, as we've been here before for an expansion, and that expansion area is where this tower will be located. And additionally, your Board of Zoning Appeals heard arguments with regard to a variance allowing a 20-foot fence structure, which is really the primary feature of the security enhancement project for Dominion. Slide, please. This tower is different than the tower that you heard earlier because it is not a commercial market tower. It's not designed for that. The microwave capabilities on this tower allow Dominion to communicate from one transmission asset to another. There are two assets, the Fredericksburg Regional Office and the Ladysmith Substation, that this facility will be able to be linked in or communicated with. That communication is very, very important because it allows Dominion's engineers to keep track of what's working and what's not working in this substation. As Mr. White noted, on these facilities, and there are many, they are typically located in our substation facilities, in Dominion substation facilities. This facility, with the increased security enhancement, is the only alternative that was looked for this tower because the point was to make sure that this piece of equipment was kept within the Going along with that to what Mr. White mentioned with regard to co-location, Dominion is not opposed to co-location. However, because it is a secured site, it would be incumbent upon the applicants of co-location to take on the financial responsibility of access into the site. Slide, please. We have prepared a few visual simulations, and these visual simulations were from adjacent property owners, specifically the Salem Fields Church. As you can see here, the tower is denoted by a red arrow in the background, and also from an adjoining neighborhood. Slide, please. Where the tower, this is coming down the transmission right away, is also denoted from a red arrow. We agree with staff that this does not have any significant impacts. We have worked with the church very closely. They are not opposed to the project. With that, that concludes my prepared remarks, and myself and my team are available for questions should you all have any.
Thank you. No battlefields. Thank goodness. There don't appear to be any questions, so let's proceed to the public hearing. Like the earlier public hearing, there are restrictions. You heard them. I don't think I have to repeat them, but if anyone, there's no one signed up.
Mr. Dunn signed up, but I don't see him in the audience, so.
All right. So does anyone wish to, during the public hearing portion, address the commission? Very well. Seeing none, the public hearing is concluded.
Sir, if I may, I have to interrupt and say that there are, in fact, battlefields nearby, as documented in the staff report. Similar to the last case, we've also received our approval from the SHPO. In addition to the battlefield, we have identified one prehistoric archaeological site that will not be impacted, but is also in the remote proximity.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, I apologize.
No, not necessary. Is there a motion related to the application? Chair will entertain a motion to recommend approval of the application.
I move for approval.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
There are no other questions. Seeing none, let's proceed to a vote. A vote yes recommends approval of the application. With Mrs. Carter's departure, it is 5 in favor, and she couldn't vote, so it passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Is there new business before the commission? Seeing none, and seeing that we lack any public for comment, the chair will then entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion's been made.
Second.
Let's proceed to a vote. It too is unanimous, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.